Check out the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer, the best in the business. It's going to be great.
Everyone, welcome to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, voice of Full Press Hockey. You get this up on YouTube, Full Press Hockey Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Also on Podbean as well. Joined by my tag team partner. You know him from the Full Press Hockey Weekly Show, which will be back for every game of the Stanley Cup Final. We'll find a way to get this done. Chris Wassel is here, and he is supporting the new Nightmare Bear.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the bear is here. Now, we have to first off thank Ted Starkey for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Who has been on the show, by the way.
Right. One of the things, Starkey sent me the idea for it, ladies and gentlemen. So, Ranger fans, blame him.
Yeah.
Dude, remember, the revenge is a best served
Yeah.
cold.
Yep.
So, needless to say, I went and started looking around. Unfortunately, or in our case, fortunately,
absolutely.
The Amazon version is downright hideous.
Yeah.
Like so bad that you just couldn't buy it. This one is actually neutral and solid. It doesn't look like a raccoon. So we went with it, and now the bear is crossing over, which is dangerous.
Yeah, the bear is crossing over, and he's got a long trip. He's got a long trip because if people lived under a rock or didn't know what was going on, well, Stanley Cup Final set, 2024 Stanley Cup Final set. Edmonton Oilers play the Florida Panthers. All previews up, fullpresshockey.com. But it's interesting because they took different paths to kind of get there, right? And we'll start with the Florida side of things, because you look at Florida, right, and you say to yourself, okay, they expect to be here. They got that new mindset. They've been there before. They're the first team since the Pittsburgh Penguins to try to get revenge from the year before where they lost in the Stanley Cup Final, win the Cup. Penguins did it. Went there in 2008, lost to Detroit, go back the following year, beat Detroit. We had the same matchup, funny enough. But you see it. Kachuk's playing differently. Bennett's playing differently. Reinhart's playing differently. Verhaeghe's playing. All these guys are playing differently now. They're all buying into this mindset, and they're all buying into the system, which, ridiculed, not ridiculed, called boring, set hockey back. I don't know. I don't know what. I can't really hear what people say because I got 3 Stanley Cup banners hanging in my room. So, it has to work, right? So, I guess. But Florida, go through Tampa, kind of steamroll them. Boston series wasn't really a series, but it could have been if it wasn't for the Sam Bennett goal, no goal controversy. But I think we all know what the outcome would have been. I think Florida would have won anyway because they're just the better team, stronger team, physical team. And then the Rangers, that series was never in doubt, in my opinion, even though they were down 2-1 in the series. Again, 2 overtime games can go either way, but to me, they dominated every game of that series. And if it wasn't for Igor Shesterkin, the prize was a sweep.
Yeah, you got to think about this. Shesterkin had a goal saved above average, averaging literally a goal a game. The last time we saw that through 3 rounds was a few years ago with Marc-Andre Fleury. So even if somehow the Rangers had gotten to the Stanley Cup Final, I can virtually guarantee, I can absolutely guarantee that number would have gone backwards.
Yeah.
He, like the Rangers, would have been out of gas. And the reason why he's out of gas is because of, yep, you guessed it, coaching.
Yeah. And you look at Florida, just wears your opponent down. They physical, forecheck, that neutral zone trap, they modified it. They just hit everything. And they get stronger as the third period goes on. They were the best third period team in the playoffs. They outscored their opponents. They outshot their opponents. And that's why the Florida Panthers have the edge in the betting side of things at minus 125 to win the Stanley Cup, first time in franchise history if they can do it. It's their third trip to the final back-to-back now. But you say to yourself, okay, Florida's, everybody expects them to win. I love what Chris Knobloch said. Playoff experience doesn't mean anything. You just asked the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. How'd that go over? That was a great quote. And you have the Edmonton Oilers on the other side of the ledger, and they're back in the Stanley Cup Final. Their 8th trip there, first since 2006, trying to end Canada's drought. Last team to win the Stanley Cup from Canada was the Montreal Canadiens. Oh, by the way,
feels like 93.
Feels like 93. Oh, fun fact. the Canadiens are the last team also from Canada to make the playoffs and win the Western Conference Clarence Campbell Bowl. That funny 2021 Stanley Cup quasi bubble. So a lot of stuff going on for the Oilers, but I will say this. Edmonton's road, a little different, kind of steamrolled through the Kings. Needed 7 games against Vancouver, some goalie in and out lineup adjustments. They basically hung on because Stuart Skinner played the game of his life, stopping 35 shots. And the Edmonton Oilers basically went Vancouver Canucks and had 10 shots on goal. And if they think that's going to get it done against the Panthers, they're sadly mistaken.
Hey, first 8 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. Stuart Skinner, bad.
Very bad.
Hideous. Like 870 save percentage, bad. Like don't look, just make it go, the bad man go away.
Right.
Last 8 games, 920 save percentage, 6.5 goals saved above average, which for him is like an entire season.
And it all started in game 4. Look, you go back to game 3 of the Dallas series, right? And that Robertson hat trick goal goes in, and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, maybe Chris Knoblauch goes back to Pickard. They make a lineup adjustments at the bottom, fix it, but they roll with Skinner. He keeps them in it. And yes, they give up the first 2 goals, but from then on, the Edmonton Oilers outscored the Dallas Stars 10-3, I believe. So, I mean, like, it's ridiculous what they did.
It's something else when you consider this too. Both teams, poetically, you have the number 1 and number 2 teams on the penalty kill.
Mm-hmm.
You have arguably 2 of the more potent teams on the power play. You have the top one, of course, Edmonton, who was, let's see, a little over 37% during the playoffs.
Yeah.
I have not since like, I don't know, the 80s perhaps, certain Islanders teams.
Yep.
Where you had a special teams percentage of over 130 combined. And Edmonton has that right now.
I mean, their penalty kill is the best in the Stanley Cup playoff. I believe what they're operating, like 98% right now. They've killed 28 straight penalties.
They've killed 28 straight.
I mean, they have a shorthanded goal to boot, too. It came in game 4, by the way, against Dallas. And let's be honest, like, Chris Knoblauch's pushed all the right buttons. When his team needed it, he pushed the right buttons. Okay, Stuart Skinner's not playing well. We'll go to Calvin Pickett for a couple games, then we're going to go back to Skinner. Okay, these guys, McLeod's not playing well. All right, we're going to take him out. Oh, Desharnais not really playing. But put Broberg in. You shuffle around Henrique, move Perry up, like split Connor, McDavid, and Leon Draisaitl up. Move RNH up to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins up with Zach Hyman and McDavid. And here we go. And obviously, the big guy on the back end, Evan Bouchard is one of the best defensemen remaining in the playoffs. Darnell Nurse is quieting his critics after a poor game 3. And he's blocked a ton of shots for this team. He's coming up with the goods. And look, the Edmonton Oilers, yes, they have the weight of Canada on them. Yes, they have the weight of a city on them. They're the underdogs, and I think they like it that way.
So, for perspective, if you're wondering, is Connor McDavid even in the top 3 among goal scorers for his team? The answer is no. There's a defenseman that scored more goals than him. There's a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins that is, funnily, here for those listening, this is pretty comical. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has literally half the shots of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Bouchard. Has 6 goals on 24 shots.
And if you look at the points in the playoffs, it's all Oilers.
It's all Oilers, by the way. 4 players now, because of game 6 with Nugent-Hopkins. You have 4 players with 20 or more points, and just about a fifth, because you have Zach Hyman who leads the playoffs with the John Druce 14 goals in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, look, and let's talk about Hyman for a minute, because he's been essential to this team's run right now. I mean, big goals, stepping up, and look, I'll say this, and I wrote about this. Look, Connor McDavid, 31 points. It's all well and good. he had his signature playoff game in Game 6 against the Dallas Stars. He did. Because, let's be honest, and he had a breakout series in the Western Conference Final. Because, let's be honest, outside of a couple of games here and there earlier in the playoffs, he was non-existent. Even though he's putting up points, but he had 5 points in one game, 4 points in another game, a couple of points here and there. But it was Draisaitl and Bouchard and Hyman that were leading the way for the Edmonton Oilers, and they were getting depth scoring. McDavid was kind of a passenger, and McDavid in Game 6 steered the train and had his Nathan MacKinnon playoff moment.
He did. We started to talk about this a little bit, obviously, because there's still 4 nights. 4 nights until the Stanley Cup Final start. But about what, 8:20, 8:30-ish, maybe 8:40. Start joking about it a little bit.
Wait a minute. Let's have some fun. 8:20, 25 does not mean 8 o'clock. Okay.
Yep.
8 o'clock means 8 o'clock.
I mean, we've talked about it. The guy, Russ and I have talked about it on Sirius XM a few times. I mean, you could go around the, if you have an ice time, stick to it. It's one thing if they tell you outright, like, hey, 8:24 puck drop.
Okay, then we're okay with that. But it's 8 o'clock and then the puck doesn't drop till 8:20. And the worst is the late games early in the playoff. Oh yeah, next game's gonna start at like 10. It doesn't start till like 10:30. It's like, bro, come on. Like, what are we doing?
Well, I mean, we had a couple that didn't start till almost 11.
Right, exactly. Come on.
Round 1, remember that? It was like one started at like 10:58, and we're just like, and that was one of the games that went to overtime. So it's just like,
yeah, exactly. So look, all games are scheduled for 8. They won't. That means the puck does not drop until later. Look, obviously, Game 1's going to be late because of the introductions and all the things, the hoopla that goes around Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. You look at it, right, and we mentioned Stuart Skinner before, right, and you brought it up on Twitter and other places. You basically said he's doing what Darcy Kemper did, but probably even more so than what Kemper did for the Avalanche in 2022. But Skinner has to continue to play at this level because we know what Bob's doing. Sergei Bobrovsky's doing for the Florida Panthers. Like, he is dialed in.
Yeah, Bob doesn't have to have a 920 or 930 save percentage. He just has to stop the shots he's A, supposed to, and B, every so often make that extra save. That's it.
Because he's got the highlight reel save of the playoffs that dates back to Game 1. Game 4 of the first round series.
Yeah, you're not.
Or Game 2. I'm sorry, Game 2 of the first round series.
Yeah, I mean, he's only facing about 25 shots a game. Actually, a little bit less than that.
Right, exactly.
So that, in some ways, makes it even more difficult. And yet he still has a 908 save percentage, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. But, again, he makes these huge saves when he has to. And,
right, exactly.
Skinner's only been doing that for a few games where, Bobrovsky did that a few times during the Rangers series, especially in Game 4 when they needed it.
And early in Game 5.
Yeah. People forget that, the Rangers did actually have somewhat of a 5-on-5 attack.
They did at times. And I think that's where the Panthers want to keep the game. They want to keep it at 5-on-5. They don't want to give the Oilers a power play every single chance because it's starting to heat up again. It was dormant, like the Bear. The Bear was dormant for a little bit. And then the power play is starting to find its way. I mean, when McDavid has a highlight reel goal like that, the power play's clicking. So you say to yourself, okay, well, we got to keep the game 5-on-5.
Yeah.
Can't, take penalties, especially stupid penalties, because they're going to end up in the back of our net.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to figure out a way to make sure the Oilers' depth beats us because the Panthers know that they supposedly have a deeper team. That's what the Dallas Stars thought, and then the injury ninja caught up to them.
There is a couple key X factors with Edmonton, and I'm kind of interested to see what happens now because, well, for one, players like Warren Foegele are going to be annoying to play against. That's one part. The other part is, at least in the last couple games, I don't know if the trend will continue. whatever magic numbing stuff they're using on Adam Henrique's ankle clearly is working better now than it did the first time around.
Yep.
Adam Henrique kind of looks like the 2012 boogeyman in all of this.
Well, speaking of the boogeyman, you mentioned his name. We know what he did against the Florida Panthers in 2012 in round 1. He scored the double overtime game-winning goal in Game 7 for the Devils to eliminate the Florida Panthers. Different Florida Panthers team. This team is more mature. They're on a mission to win. They have a different mindset. But so do the Oilers. Because the Oilers are just like, yeah, we'll take 10 shots. We're just going to defend now. Like you saw it in Game 5 against Dallas, right? Leon Draisaitl probably could have gone into offensive mode. No, it took the puck deep. Like the Oilers understand, okay, losses to Vegas, losses to Colorado. Like, okay, we have to play differently. And, I was talking, again, another shout out to Ted Starkey on the program. But him and I were talking. It's like somebody who doesn't touch the trophy is going to lose. And does it really matter? Because, as I mentioned, Scott Stevens touched the trophy 4 times. Devils went 3-1 in the Stanley Cup Final.
Right.
The one time they didn't touch, they lost. So why don't you follow your old captain? Like the Oilers. McDavid, why don't you follow Gretzky's lead? Guy touched it every time. They did okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make it I've said this. I want to see somebody drink from it.
Right? Like
just something completely so outside the normal that you
can you drink? Wait, let's real quick before we get back to the analysis.
The last one, I believe you could.
The Prince of Wales trophy looks a little difficult to do.
That's all right. So, look, folks, I get it. This is bordering on like absurdity. I get it. But so we're gonna try this. So. I brought up to somebody the Prince of Wales trophy
right
the other day. I was like, look at all the pretty pictures of it. So here's the problem with the Prince of Wales trophy, just from a common sense standpoint. You'd have to be able to open the top somehow.
Right, and I don't know if the top opens.
So of course, somebody had it. Somebody always has to ask this. Has the Prince of Wales trophy ever been opened? And the answer is no.
No, never been opened because no one wants to drink from it and no one wants to have fun. We know the Campbell Bowl has been opened.
Yes. The Campbell Bowl was actually broken a few times almost.
Yes. I just think it's one of those superstitions that it's like, all right, I guess it's the cool thing to do now. Let's not touch the trophy. But I think, like, you've earned it because you've gone through a tough Western Conference. You've gone through a tough Eastern Conference. Like, that's a trophy. Like, I'm not going to say have a parade with the thing, but you can skate it off. Like, what's the harm in that? Yeah. Like, you always heard the Devils guys say, oh, next one's what we want. The next one's what we want. Celebrate it tonight. That's all well and good because you should. Because you've won the Eastern Conference. That should be a proud achievement. Or the Western Conference in the case of the Edmonton Oilers. And we didn't even bring up the fact that at the Hockey Hall of Fame weekend in November 13th, they were dead last, close to it, in the National Hockey League. You had the look of McDavid and Draisaitl after losing to the Sharks. They fired Jay Woodcroft. Chris Knobloch comes in and is pushing all the right buttons for this team. And maybe, just maybe, John Tortorella was right when he was said on ESPN that Connor McDavid's just got to tweak his game a little bit to where he plays a little bit more defense, and they're going to have more success in the playoffs. Does everybody remember that one? He got criticized for it, but maybe
roundly too, I might add.
Right, but I think it was right because you see McDavid's playing more defense now.
Yeah, they all that whole entire top 6 because they have to at times. It's just the reality of the game.
And then you look at the Florida side with the coaching and Paul Maurice, and he's just that zen like Phil Jackson. Everybody's like calm, cool on the bench, or sometimes he needs to give them a little profanity into their lives because they're not playing well. But they keep it calm, cool, and collective because no matter the game, no matter the scoreline, they're just playing their game and they know they're going to win and they expect to be here. And that's what happens when you go to a Stanley Cup Final. And you win an Atlantic Division. And last year, you probably, by this hair of your chinny chin chin, got in. and you are resembling the team that did win the President's Trophy a while ago. So, look, it's going to be a tough series for either team. I know everybody says Florida, but look, I'm not going to underestimate the Edmonton Oilers in this one. I'm really not, because I just think they have the tools. Yes, I understand the Panthers have experience. The Oilers don't have as many guys have gone to a Stanley Cup Final before. But you know what? The guys that have went there understand it now.
100%. I mean, this is going to be a close series no matter what. All right, so maybe it doesn't necessarily go 7 games, but it could.
It could. Who says it can't? Like,
yeah.
I think I would be disappointed if it didn't go at least 6.
Yeah, it's 6. But by the way, like a phoenix rising from the ashes of the first 2 rounds, Florida in 6, Edmonton in 6. Oh, we also had the amount of overtime games in each series. This doesn't mean anything for the Stanley Cup.
No, it means no. It means Jack.
First rule of predicting games in the playoffs. There are no rules.
There are no rules. Didn't Florida beat Edmonton twice in the regular season?
Yeah, and by the way, convincingly. So don't look into that.
And wasn't one of those games early when Edmonton was bad?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so these regular season statistics don't mean squat come the playoffs. They don't mean squat.
Look at it. Please, people. Don't look at it. Writers, don't put it in your predictions. Okay, here's why. So the first meeting, by the way, all the way back in November.
So the Oilers were bad.
The Oilers were still rather bad.
When was the next meeting?
Before Christmas.
Still bad.
Still bad.
Still bad. They were starting to turn it around, but they didn't hit that 16-game heater yet.
No, not even close. Because we have it here thanks to our friends at the great heater started. Sorry, Jim. But Devils fans.
Started in New Jersey.
Yep.
Started in New Jersey.
This, mind you, was after a 3rd straight loss on Long Island.
Yeah.
Where they played like Florida was really considering what do we do here?
And don't forget, they scored, I believe, 3 goals in like a minute and 48 seconds or something in the third period to begin the third period. So,
yep.
And they played patient hockey, and that's what they're doing now. They're playing patient hockey. Like they've talked about it then, they've continued to talk about it. And the guys are praising Stuart Skinner. And yes, a lot of guys are eating crow right now. But at the time, you had to criticize Stuart Skinner because he wasn't playing well. And you had to criticize Darnell Nurse because he wasn't playing well. And I'm glad those guys are performing well. And I'm glad to see the Edmonton Oilers there. But they still need... And let's be honest, they really haven't been tested physically. Florida's going to test them physically.
Right. Just a little bit. And that's what people, again, it's more than just, okay, how much does Team X weigh? How much does Team Y weigh?
Right.
It's the constant accumulation of punishment over a long series.
Right, exactly. Like you saw with the Rangers series.
Yeah, but look, by the 3rd period of that game, yes, I know the Rangers scored in the 3rd period. Yes, Ranger fans, I know, I get it. Your almighty Panarin finally showed up. But that team was beaten so badly that literally 0.15. That was it. That was the goals expected from the Rangers in the 3rd period of a game 6 where they need to win and they're down 2 goals.
Right.
And score effects are taking place at that point.
Right.
0.15. Florida had the better chances. Got a bit of an unlucky break obviously on the Panarin goal. You call for what it is.
It's a great shot, though.
You got it. Look, it reminds me of the 2010 Olympic gold medal game where the puck bounces off the lineman's skate right to Sidney Crosby. Look, that shot is a great shot.
Yeah, it's a great shot. Panarin scores. But again, it was too little too late because of what Florida did defensively. Look, the fact that Alexander Barkov's line shut down Nikita Kucherov, David Pasternak, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, and Artemi Panarin. And you could throw Tkachuk and Bennett and all those guys in there as well. Not to mention what Lundell did, what Tarasenko's doing, Luostarinen. Like these guys played defensive hockey, and they play the same way, and they force you to play that way. And if you don't adjust, even if you adjust, you may not win.
I want to point out something very handy in this, because everybody loves numbers and all this fun stuff. Both teams in the Stanley Cup Final, their average weight is under 200 pounds. It is not the I won't even use the dog.
Nah.
No. I'm going to go really simple with this. These teams are fast enough that they hit more ferociously than your slower teams or your slower defensemen. And that's what people aren't quite realizing here.
Yeah, I agree too. And you think about it, right? And there's a couple things I want to point out. Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett have played against the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs before. Yeah. Except this time they're more mature. Because if they played like they did in 2022 in that second round, that's basically what cost the Flames the series. Outside of the goaltending, just went to complete crap. But those guys played undisciplined hockey because they just wanted to hit everything, and Tkachuk did not play his game. Yes, he's going to want to hit some guys here and there, but that's the kind of game Evander Kane likes to play too. Because don't forget, Evander Kane really was lifeless against the Dallas Stars because they don't do scrums after the whistle. Panthers do that stuff. They hit. He loves that kind of game. That's gonna favor Corey Perry too, even though he's slower. He's gonna love that crap. But I think if Tkachuk and Bennett, they're gonna play, what they do. There may be a couple of calls that go McDavid's way in this series. They may not. I don't know. But Tkachuk and Bennett are mature enough players now not to know to put their team in a bad situation.
Right. Last year, 2023 playoffs, slightly different circumstances in a way, but Tkachuk had 73 penalty minutes, by the way.
Right.
I know most of those came in the final couple games where literally he looked more broken than a jigsaw puzzle that got dropped from the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
But again, there were a number of times throughout even that playoff run where he knew he took too many penalties. Right.
And it almost cost his team the series too. He was being stupid.
Remember, the people forget the Boston series was almost over before it started.
Right. The Boston series last year, they were up 3-1. Tkachuk started to play his game at the end of the game 4, and it kind of got in Boston's head, and they didn't like it. But I think, again, he's mature enough. He realizes what he can or cannot do. Paul Maurice has got him playing the right way. Look, this is going to be a great Stanley Cup Final. It's going to be a heck of a flight. That's why we have 2 days in between a lot of these games. But look, I'm interested to see really what it comes down to is this 5-on-5 play for Edmonton. Can they match what Florida brings shift after shift after? We know what McDavid and Draisaitl can do with their speed. We know what Hyman can do. We know what all these guys can do. But can they sustain it over a long series? It's like you and I watch tennis, right? Bring a tennis reference into this thing. We're playing at Roland Garros. Best of 5 sets against Rafa. You may play great for 1 set. Can you do it 4 more times, 3 more times? Because you're going to make you grind. And that's what the Panthers are going to do in this series.
Absolutely. And that's the difference. Kind of remind you, those old-fashioned 1970s prize fights where it's just like these fighters would just grind each other, keep grinding. Have enough offense to keep you honest, but it was just you felt drained.
It was a war of attrition, and there's going to be a lot of ice bags after this thing. And whoever wins the Stanley Cup, look, hats off to them because they've earned it, right? Florida's either going to win their first in franchise history. Edmonton's going to win their first since 1990. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously the odds are out Conn Smythe. You could go Connor McDavid. If he has a big series, probably gets it. If the Oilers win, he may still get it if they lose.
Draisaitl's plus 350. I'm just saying.
Right. Yeah, I'm taking that. Bobrovsky's up there as well. Barkov, like all the usual suspects. Bouchard, Gus Forsling's plus 5,000. You never know with him.
Yeah, you got him as an option. I think you got Tkachuk is a because he's a little bit down the chain.
Yeah, he's a little bit down the chain. It goes McDavid, Bobrovsky, Barkov, Tkachuk, Draisaitl, Bouchard, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, Forsling.
Forsling's worth a shot.
He's worth enough of a shot, right?
You almost have to take it.
Right, exactly. And don't forget, Bet Altiques. We've been using them all playoffs. Check them out. FPH24's discount code, promo code, 25% off. Monthly, yearly subscriptions. We've been hitting that money, fire money on the Edmonton triple, and keep riding that horse, baby. Just keep riding that horse. But as we wrap things up here on the Full Press NHL podcast for this evening, we say to ourselves, we say to the Stanley Cup, people say, Edmonton and the Stars, and it's not going to be a ratings bonanza. I think this is going to be a ratings bonanza for the league because guess who's there? Connor McDavid. And that's what you want.
You want stars. Do we really want the New York as much? We're going to anger a lot of people by saying this.
That's all right.
We really want New York playing Dallas in the Stanley Cup Final.
No. Not really.
No. I mean, would New York and Edmonton have worked? I mean,
the rivalry.
But then Glenn's going to have a coronary somewhere. I mean, that's not good. We can't have that. So that was out. This series.
This is intriguing to me.
A lot more fun than people think.
It is. I really think it's going to be a lot more fun than people think. And look, everybody can get on the schedule and the schedule maker and how they did everything. This is why they did everything, because of the travel. They planned for this scenario.
Yeah. And look, so.
Is it a tight schedule? Absolutely.
Right. Very tight.
Very, very tight. Because when the Cup's awarded, 3 days later, the awards happen in Vegas in the draft. So, it's a tight window.
Yeah, there's a potential that we could have the Stanley Cup
parade,
the Cup parade, awards, and draft all in the same week,
and within a 72-hour period of each other.
Yeah. And then by the way,
the guys by the way, a couple of guys have to be there. Don't forget, McDavid's up, needs to get an award. Somebody's getting an award. Imagine if the Oilers win the Cup. Do you think are they going to go to Vegas?
Are they going to celebrate in Vegas?
I would.
That would be the ultimate slap in the face to Vegas,
right? Yeah, we're going to party in Vegas. Sure, why not? And then, by the way, the following week, the free agency starts. I mean,
we've said it. This was possible.
It was possible. There's a potential where chaos could ensue, and. Look, you could be upright against it. Now, I do agree, we should be... the last time the Cup was awarded that late in June was because of the lockout. I remember 95 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Was anything later than that?
Well,
I believe recently...
the bubble.
The bubble, yeah. Well, the bubble... Does the bubble even count?
Honestly, no.
The bubble doesn't really count, right?
I always laugh at this because, by the way, don't ever look at Wikipedia.
No, they lie
for this reason. So, how funny is this? Now, obviously that the 95 series could have went all the way through the end of June.
Yeah, it could have. It was over in 4 games.
Thankfully, on June 24th,
1995, the Devils won the Stanley Cup for the first time.
Stanley Cup. Of course, naturally, guess when the series could potentially end.
June 24th, 2024.
Look, we're not suggesting that this could happen, but again, I could remember how people said that the NHL awards was held so differently that year.
Yeah. I mean, look, do I like it? No. Do I think it should, do I think that we should be awarding the cup mid-June? Absolutely. 1,000%. 1,000% we should be awarding the cup, mid-June. But again, also, don't forget, June 24th, the Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup in 2013.
That is true, too.
So, I mean...
Also a year of lockout. Yeah, I know.
Lockout, yeah. But, these late start... We have to get this calendar back. But, look, all criticism aside, all nitpicking aside, this is going to be a heck of a Stanley Cup final. This is going to be a great Stanley Cup final. I cannot wait to see what Connor McDavid can do against this Florida Panthers team. The Florida Panthers team is hungry. The Edmonton Oilers have the weight of their shoulders. To me, there's a ton of storylines inside the game itself. I just can't wait for the puck to drop. I can't wait for what these guys are going to say Friday too, but I can't wait for the puck to drop on game 1 of the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah. I mean, look, people, it's almost over.
It is almost over, right? You think about it. We got potentially 7 games left in the NHL season. 7.
We made it.
We made it. But look, as I said off the top, Full Press Hockey Weekly pregame shows will happen for every game of the Stanley Cup final. We'll make it happen. We will do it as we did last year, and we'll have a special guest sometimes with us if he can join us. If not, we'll try to pre-record some things with him because I know he has a lot to say about Seattle. And we have some other topics to discuss outside of the Stanley Cup final, but this was our preview show here on the Full Press NHL Podcast. Again, get it, subscribe, click that subscribe button on YouTube, Full Press Hockey Podcast. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, listen, download. I've been Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. Previews coming up shortly. Chris Wassel, he's part of the Hockey World Order too. Guys, we've been taking over everywhere. Chris, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Always is. Always is.
Oh, always is, guys. Remember, Game 1, Stanley Cup Final goes Saturday night. Stay tuned for more from Full Press Hockey. We are out.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.